equipping you to navigate your grief journey after child loss. This is the Hope After Child Loss podcast. On each episode, we explore the many challenges of grief as guests share their stories of loss. It's also a place where you will hear about God showing up in our darkest moments and restoring meaning, purpose, and hope to shattered lives. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Hope After Child Loss podcast. I'm Greg Buffkin, and as always, thank you for listening. Guys, today I'll be talking with Tommy Henderson about his 16-month-long journey since losing his son Nick in October of 23 to a hit-and-run driver. Now, here's my conversation with Tommy. Well, Tommy, welcome to our podcast, man. It is so good to have you with us today.
Thank you, Greg. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Tommy, I don't know whether you've ever listened to any of our episodes or not. I think you told me that you do. So you probably know already that at the beginning of every episode, I give my guests an opportunity just to share a little bit personal information, whatever you'd like to share. You know, it could be where you live, what you do for a living, that sort of thing. So I'll give you a minute or two to do that, and then we'll just dive into your story.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my name is Tommy Henderson, and I live in southern Nevada in Las Vegas. I moved here from Ohio in 2007, and when I moved here, I was a single dad to my son Nicholas, and we'll talk a lot about Nick today. When I was a single dad at the time, and I'd had a handful of friends that moved out here kind of ahead of me, and they were making a good living. I was at a crossroads in my life and not very attached to a relationship or a job, so I thought that I would give it a shot. My roots are still in Ohio, and I feel planted there, but at the same time, I knew that if I didn't love Nevada, if it wasn't everything I thought it would be, I would have the option to move back. Of course, that option is less of an option now because since I moved to Nevada, I married, I eventually divorced, but I have two kids named Allie and Andrew who are 9 and 12, and we all live here together. So I travel back to Ohio. My roots are in Ohio. I have a lot of family in Ohio, but meanwhile, the Lord has me here, and I make the most of it.
Yeah, and you've got two girls that live there, so all the more reason to stay close by, right?
Well, I do. Yeah, my kids that I'm a single dad to, one's a male, Andrew, who's 9, and Aliana is 12, female. So
I apologize.
have a boy and a girl. No worries.
That's great. Well, Tommy, you referred a minute ago to your son, Nick. Let's talk about Nick. I think at this point, our listeners know that you lost Nick. What they probably don't know is that you lost him in October of 23. So it's only been 16 months. Your grief journey is a very early one. So tell us a little bit about Nick, who he was and how old he was, and I know you guys had a close relationship, so just share a little bit about who he was to our listeners, or with our listeners.
Yeah, he was the apple of my eye. I raised him in Ohio from the year 2000 until 2007. In 2004, his mom died, so I was a single dad to Nick until 2011 when I eventually married. But we were very, very close, not only as father and son, but I think just the fact that his mom was gone and that I was a single parent, we really developed a very close-knit relationship. He was my right-hand man, and we went everywhere together. But as he grew up, we eventually did move to Nevada, and there was about 4 years, even in Nevada, where it was just he and I, and then our family grew, of course.
Right.
Nick was very active. He really loved sports. He was a healthy young kid. He played junior high and high school basketball, but not for the high school. He was actually on a club team. He really loved basketball, was probably his favorite sport, but in high school, he also developed an interest in CrossFit as a discipline, but that actually led to coaching in CrossFit as well. So he was very, very athletic. He was very mindful of physiology and taking good care of your body, and that really stuck with him most of his life. He was really good at avoiding the things that are not good for your body, drugs and stimulants, alcohol. Even in the fitness community, of course, there's a lot of stimulants, and
Sure.
he just wasn't into that. He's a very natural living type of person, and also interested in focused breathing. And I really respected that a lot about him, honestly. I looked up to him in that regard because he took better care of himself than I did or than I do. And I think as I live in his honor and as I try to be healthier myself, that's, I think, partly related to what I know he would want me to be doing and how he would want me to be living. So, but he was, I'm talking about his movement and his body, but the best thing about Nick was his heart. He had a heart of gold. He loved people. He was very kind, very compassionate, very service oriented. I don't think he ever met another person that he didn't like. He loved people. It didn't matter
Yeah.
where he met them or how old they were or what their gender was or what their background was or
Yeah.
their race. He was a people person for sure. I
Sounds
think
like he was the kind of guy that made other people feel good.
he did, yeah. And I think he might have had some awareness of that or some understanding that part of the reason that he was where he was at was to have some influence and to love on people and to just make them feel good about themselves, because I think even Nick carried a lot of weight around and had some challenges of his own. And so when he was confronted or engaged with somebody that was hurting, his heart really was big for that person because he could not exactly relate to what they're going through, but he just had a really big heart for people, and I love
Yeah,
that about
sounds
him.
yeah, sounds like he was just had a very sympathetic and understanding character about him. And Tommy, what do you want people to remember the most about Nick? If you
I
could
think
just kind
most
of
of those
encapsulate
things,
it.
yeah, I mean, most of those things that I just shared, I want him to be remembered as somebody that loved and somebody
Yeah.
that cared, that had a big heart, that loved the Lord. You know, I guess in a way, I think of the Lord and how we're never too far away from Him. We're never out of His reach. There was no person that Nick couldn't level with or bring a smile to their face just because of the way that he was. He was just very warm and engaging, and he asked good questions that made you feel like he cared. He didn't spend time in the shallow end of the pool. He liked to dive in deep and get to the
Yeah.
heart of the matter. And I think that sometimes that's even a little bit awkward or uncomfortable for people to have somebody that's just really up close and personal and not shallow. But I think that some of those character traits he took from his dad. I'm the same way. I'm not a shallow end of the pool person myself. So,
Right. But Tommy, do you think sometimes too that people who engage with other people at that level, who seem to be able to not just be sympathetic, but almost empathetic, even if they haven't been there, it's like a gift that not everybody has. And I think sometimes, and I just want to hear what you think about this because you knew Nick better than anybody. I think sometimes when people when they're wired like that and gifted like that, they can take a lot of the weight of other people's problems on themselves, and they can carry around some of the weight of that. Did you see that in Nick?
I don't think it was a heavy burden for him. I would say generally no. I think that what would happen was that he would hear of suffering or brokenness or pain that somebody was having, and whether or not he could relate to that pain point directly, I think at minimum he could relate to the nature of pain and the nature of feeling maybe hard on yourself, or just feeling like, he just faced his own set of challenges in life. And so I don't think that he bore that, though. I think it was more like a gateway to relating to people, but it was a two-way street. They certainly were able to relate back to him. So I think actually probably the converse of that, Greg, if I'm being honest. I think that rather than carrying other people's pain, he was probably able to give away something that he had, which was a really positive thing. So good question. I like the way that I was able to conclude, because no, I don't. He had enough of his own stuff that he was carrying necessarily. I don't think that he did bear other people's burdens. I think he could relate to them, but I think in a formal conversation or exchange, they probably, if anything was given or exchanged, it was more of a positive than a negative.
Yeah, that's great. He gave away more than he took.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, we need more people like that, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Nick, the world is a better place with Nick in it, 100%.
I am absolutely sure of that. The conversations I have with other dads are a little bit more rare than the ones that I have with grieving moms. And it's kind of different with us as men in the way that we process and the way that we navigate pain and grief and emotions and all that goes with that. I think sometimes we just have a harder time trying to figure out what we do with all of that. So what I would like to ask you is, you've been on this journey now for 16 months. How have you navigated the kind of emotions and the kind of pain and the kind of loss that you've been through? Because you know as well as I do, it's not just about feelings. Grief impacts us at a physical level. It impacts us on a mental level and a spiritual level. So it's all of that. So what would you say to that, Tommy?
Well, I'd be lost without the Lord. He is my leader and director, and I plan my ways, but the Lord directs my steps. How I live that out, what that looks like in real life terms is, my faith is active. I'm active in the church, and I spend time with the Lord often. I'd like to say daily, and certainly in one way or another it's daily, but I would like to be more disciplined in my my own personal quiet time and whatnot. I'm not an all-star in that regard, but so I would say, like, leaning on my faith has been of utmost importance and really gotten me through the challenges. Being honest and open with how I'm feeling about the circumstances, my loss, even with my grief journey, I tend to not avoid the pain. I lean into it, and you don't necessarily get to the other side of grief. It is a journey, and it's not necessarily a journey that's becoming easier for me. In some ways, it even becomes harder in time. But leaning on the Lord, He's my strength. But also associating with other people that are going through similar things has been helpful for me. I think when you're a grieving parent, especially a grieving dad, you just feel quite isolated, like nobody really understands what you're going through. Honestly, Greg, the podcast has been a part of my grief journey. I've listened to most of the episodes. I'm not sure all of them, but That's been very helpful for me. I go to Grief Share. I found a group that is nearby, and next week will be the fourth week. So I've gone to weeks 1, 2, and 3. I participated in some other Grief Share experiences and times, but this one feels a little bit more conducive to I guess it's the timing and the location and the night of the week that it is. It just seems like something that I want to follow through with. Grief Share has really been a good, productive environment for me.
That's a great organization, but you've got to be ready for it. Sometimes I've heard other people share what you just did, that they tried one grief share group and it just wasn't a good fit for a multitude of reasons. But then at some point later they find one and they seem to be able to plug into it better than previously. And sometimes I think too, the timing of it factors in as well. Sometimes when you're really early on in that very painful season of grief, those early days, weeks, months, you may not be ready to be in a group of people. And that leads me to ask you too. You were referring to talking about finding other people who've been through what you've been through. It's amazing how that happens after you lose a child. And I've had a number of other guests who have shared that too. That we seem to get connected. It's like the Lord connects us with people that we can identify with, that can empathize, not just sympathize, but empathize with us. And they know what we've experienced. And so they're able to come alongside us at a level that other people can't. Did you have another guy in your life who was a friend who would just listen? It's not that he did something spectacular, but that he was just there to listen when you needed somebody to talk to.
Yeah, a couple people come to mind. I mean, I'm actively engaged in my own version of counseling with a therapist that I didn't start with until Nick died. Prior to that, actually, I'm thinking of my friend Robert, a mutual friend, introduced us, although we hadn't met in person, maybe just introduced me to Robert probably about a year before his son died. And the way he introduced me to him was just through a prayer request and said, hey, I have this guy. His son is really facing some health challenges, and join me in prayer for him. And I did, but I didn't take it all that seriously. I didn't spend hours praying for Robert's son, whose name was Gabe. But Nick died, and that was in October of 2023. But in December of 2023, just a couple of months after Nick's death, Robert's son Gabe died, and Gabe had cancer, and that was what took him. Robert has become a friend of mine through all of this. In fact, we had dinner last night together. When you're going through grief, I mentioned isolation, and you feel like this island that nobody can quite relate to or maybe they even grief share. I would go to grief share, but I would be among widows, or I was the young guy in the room, and nobody really had experienced child loss like I had. So I think that the more similar circumstances to your own, it's easier to relate to, but also it's a kind of like a pick me up personally to have somebody that really does understand what you're going through. And I think that's the beauty of the podcast, Greg. Like, I really like the Hope After Child Loss podcast because it's very relatable. The guests that come and share on your show are dealing with the same things that I'm dealing with. And, to hear your story about Ryan and the path you walked with him, none of us really know it anywhere near as well as you knew Ryan and I knew Nick, but nonetheless, it feels good to have people that are in similar shoes. But if you don't seek them out, I don't necessarily think that you're going to find them. Of course, the Lord lines things up and puts that together, but I think it takes some initiative, and I think that you really have to spearhead that opportunity.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think you have to be open to talking with other people about it. I think sometimes men find it easier to just bury themselves in work or in a hobby or whatever it might be because let's face it, guys are good at compartmentalizing. We put this in a box and we put that in a box and something else in a box, and when we need whatever that is, we can kind of pull that back out and deal with it then. Whereas I think women are a whole lot better about all of that being it's all together. They don't separate things like that. And so I think sometimes for us guys, it can be easy to try to run away from it, not even really consciously, instead of letting other people in. But I love what you said along the way over the last few minutes that, you leaned into it. You didn't try to run away from it. And that helps in the healing process because eventually you're going to have to deal with it. We all do. And yeah, it's painful. There's nothing fun about it. There's nothing easy about it. Grieving is hard work. But when you lean into it, you share it with the Lord and you share it with somebody else, you can borrow from their strength and you can borrow from the faith of somebody else when yours feels like it's failing you or it just feels so weak.
Totally.
Tommy,
Yeah. Robert was having a tough day yesterday. He
was
admitted
he?
that, and he said, I'm really happy to hear from you. I've been going through my own thing, and this was really good for me. So it's nice to be able to be that sounding board for others as well. And I really believe that I honor Nick in reaching out to other people and to I want to make something of what's left. Like I have the memories and I have his life and the pictures, videos, all the good, but my love for Nick or me being his dad didn't end when he died. Like that's still very much a part of me and something that it will always be. And I'm excited to see how the Lord rolls it all out. I don't really know exactly what it looks like, but I do believe that the rest of my life, the Lord will use Nick's death in some way to bring glory to him. So I'm all for
He
that, and I'm excited about it.
he will. That's very well said, Tommy. And when we let him, God will use something that's so incredibly painful and tragic and traumatic for good in somebody else's life as well as our own. And when it's we're in that fresh season of grief, it's almost impossible to even think about that. How could anything good possibly come from losing my child? But as time goes by, you can begin to see in retrospect what God's weaving into that story and how he'll use that if we'll let him to encourage somebody else or to give them some hope when they see that not only have you survived it, but you can actually thrive again and life can be good again. It certainly doesn't feel that way early on, but we can have hope, and hope can exist and joy can exist alongside grief because as you said, and you said it well, we don't ever get over it. We learn to live with it and to live through it, but it's a lifelong journey, isn't it?
So far, yeah, I don't see this going away, but I wouldn't want it to. Like I said,
Oh, of course
the
not.
memories and Nick's life is it I like creating his legacy around his life, and that's what we're doing now, as far as I'm concerned. So it
Yeah.
bobs and we it has some ups and downs, and it's definitely not a walk in the park. But no, you're not gonna get to the other side of it. But there is a process, and I think that it's okay to get better too, in a way. Like you probably can relate to crying every day for like months on end, and then one day you don't necessarily cry, and then you're like, well, what's wrong with me that I didn't cry today? Am I am I not a good dad, or have I forgotten the loss, or? But that's just I think the crying is a metaphor for how
Yeah.
things they don't become really less hard, but I think you strengthen, and the Lord carries me. That's the bottom line. He just
Yeah.
meets me right where I'm at because He's a good God.
Yes, he is. And I laughed a minute ago when you said that, Tommy, because, I absolutely understood what you were saying about one day you suddenly find yourself actually feeling pretty decent. It's like, why am I feeling decent? Why am I feeling good? Because I lost my son, and you feel guilty. It's like a conundrum. You want to feel good again, but you don't want to feel good again because you feel like if you're feeling good, somehow you're betraying your child and you're
Yeah, but
betraying
I
their
think
memory.
as for the betrayal, I think when I really get honest with myself, Nick wouldn't want me to be
Of
in a
course not.
slump or down in the dumps or have his death define who I am. I think Nick would really want me to recover strong and even stronger and have his death be the catalyst to the rest of my life. And so I don't necessarily feel like I'm betraying Nick in that sense, but maybe it's more just like a personal guilt I bring on myself.
Well, I think it's what grief does to us, Tommy. I've talked to any number of people, and they've all experienced similar thoughts and feelings when they've started having good days again, because for a long time you feel like that'll never happen. But it's just what grief does to our brains. We don't think rationally about everything. Sometimes people think they're absolutely losing their minds when it's nothing more than the grief fog, that it's similar to what people talked about, when COVID was with us back in the early season, COVID brain. And grief brain has a lot of similarities with that. I know I experienced that.
Yeah, you feel like out of body in some ways, or just who am I?
Yeah,
Who is this guy in my own skin? And it's much
right.
different. But truth be told, we aren't the same, Greg. This is who we are, a different version of ourselves because we've lost our child. And I'll never be the same. That part of my heart that associated with Nick, in a way it's been taken away from me, but in a way it remains.
Right. How could you ever be the same? I mean, really, how could we ever be the same again?
That piece of my heart is, physically Nick's been removed from my life, but that piece of my heart that for 23 years was associated with his life and his being his dad, that still exists. And so I carry that with me as a pain point, but also it's not just painful. There's joy in the suffering if you look for it, believe it or
Oh,
not.
there is, and it may not make sense to some of you who are listening today. You might be in that early season where you still feel like you're in a state of shock and everything hurts, and it just feels like nothing will ever be good again. But Tommy and I would both want you guys to know that there is absolutely hope that you will have joy and peace and meaning and purpose in your life again. It just takes a while. But lean into the Lord and lean into other people that can help carry some of that load. Tommy, what surprised you the most about grief? I mean, before we lose a child, a lot of us have had other losses, whether it be a parent, grandparent, friend, whatever. But what would you say surprised you the most about this kind of grief?
I think the endurance and persistence of it's really all consuming. It's like a filter or glasses that I wear where my outlook is different. It's just I knew actually the day that Nick was injured that my life was permanently changed from that moment on, and I knew that it wouldn't just change the fact that Nick died and he would no longer be around, but I knew that it would affect every aspect of my life, almost literally. Probably not every aspect is affected by it. I mean, I still eat, drink, sleep, maybe similar, but even that, I mentioned the eating earlier. I think I eat differently because I want to be more healthy myself. But I knew that my relationships would all be affected. My marriage, how I related to my other children, professionally, what I wanted out of life, and my opportunities and goals really changed. So I think that it's not a great answer, I don't think, for what am I surprised about, but everything changes when you lose a kid from the top down, and for better or worse. I think that you can let it define you and destroy you probably too, but I'm bigger than that, and that's not the direction I'm headed. I'm going to continue to rise above this and be the best man and father that I can be, because that's my character, and I think that I honor Nick in doing so.
Yeah. Well, I think that personally is a great answer, Tommy. There is no right or wrong answer to that. It's different for every single individual. Do you think you're a better person now than you were before losing Nick?
I think I am, yeah. And I'm not even sure that I can put my finger on exactly which, but I think generally I am. I have different priorities and focuses, and I think that my faith has become even more important to me than it was. I think that before Nick died, the Lord knew what was ahead, and he began to prepare my heart and spirit for that event. And I think that he has he's strengthened my character meanwhile, but it doesn't just happen. It's a function of intent and leaning into it. But there's no way I could have gotten through what I've gone through without my faith, Greg. It really is an important part of my life, and the Lord just pulls me in close at the times that I need it, and he's a soft landing for me. So
yeah, I can identify with that very strongly, Tommy. I can't imagine trying to go through something like what you've been through and what we've been through and not have a relationship with the Lord. I know that people do it every day. I just can't imagine how they do it, and I wouldn't want to know. It's just
no, and I don't think they do as well, honestly. I think that I'm not listening to their podcasts. I wouldn't get it. I don't think I'd get much out of them. I want to strengthen my faith through the process, but it's very helpful is the bottom line. I do it because I'm a committed Christian, but there's also output from it. It really does make the grief journey, I guess, easier. Easier feels like an inappropriate word, but in a way, having the Lord as your strength and shield, it does make it easier.
It does. It changes everything in every situation in life, I think. And I can say that at a personal level. And I love something you said a minute ago. I wanted to circle back to that. And that was, you said that the grief doesn't have to become your identity. And that is so important for people to understand, because when you're in that early season of grief, you feel like that has become your identity, that you are that parent who has lost a child, and that when you walk into a room, that's who everybody sees. And you become very conscious of that, very self-conscious at times. But what we want to help someone who's in that season, in that place today, to understand, it might feel like it's become your new identity, but it's not. It is what you're walking through right now. It's what you're experiencing. But you are who you are, and grief does not have to stay your identity. As Tommy's talked about, trust other people to help carry some of that load, whether it be a counselor, a friend, whether it be other people in a grief share group, whatever it might be. And absolutely, most importantly, lean into the Lord and let Him help carry some of that. I love the scripture And I'm not gonna try to remember the chapter and verse, but I think it's Psalm 34:18 maybe, or 34:8, that it says that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. And the word crushed is so descriptive of somebody who is grieving the loss of a child, because you just feel like your body and your mind and your spirit have been crushed under the weight of something that you could have never in a million years imagined that you would go through or survive.
Yeah, it's all consuming. It affects your body, mind, heart, soul, spirit.
Absolutely.
But no, it's not my identity. It could become that, I feel like, if I let it,
It could.
if I lay low and just sulk and be a victim. But I don't want that for myself. I know Nick wouldn't want that for me, and so I'm heading in a different direction.
And it goes back to something we talked about earlier in our conversation. We have to make choices, and we have to make healthy choices. Certainly, there's no right or wrong way to grieve. We both know that. But there are healthy and unhealthy ways to grieve. And a lot of that just simply is a matter of what we choose to do with it. The easy way out is to just give into it, and if you do that, it can consume you and it can make you bitter. But we always have a choice. We can let things like this make us bitter, or we can let them make us better. And as you said, you believe now that you are a better version of Tommy Henderson. And I would say the same thing about me, Tommy. I think that I'm a better version of who I was before we lost Ryan. I wish that had not been the catalyst.
Right.
But God used that to bring changes in my life, the way that I see other people and interact with other people, and the way that I'm able to love other people and be more and just feel more compassion towards them. So I would just encourage you, if you're listening today and you're just in that place where you feel lost and like things are never going to get better, just hang in there, trust the Lord, give it to Him, and invite other people into your life that you can share it with, and take it one single day at a time. Sometimes you got to take it an hour at a time, but there is hope. Don't give up on the hope. Tommy, I want to ask you one last question before we go. And everybody has a different answer for this, but other than the things that we've talked about, if there's another dad listening today who's even earlier in his grief journey, are there any resources that somebody pointed out to you or that you discovered along the way that have really made a difference for you, that have helped, that have given you some encouragement, that have given you some hope that you would want to share with them?
Hang out here. This is a great podcast. Hope After Child Loss podcast. I'm certainly going to plug that. Grief Share for me has been helpful. We talked a little bit about that. Reading, writing. Some of the books I read, I think the more specific they are to your actual situation, probably the more productive they might be for your grief journey. I really liked a book called Through the Eyes of a Lion. It's written by a pastor called Levi Lusko, who lost his
Yes.
daughter tragically out of the blue. Lean into your faith. But those are the main things, the things we already discussed that that I'm doing is just spend time around other faith people. Let them encourage you. Don't be afraid to ask for help, even if the help is just somebody on the other end of the phone that you can talk to and share where you're at. I think being honest with yourself is really pretty productive too. I'm not the guy that just tries to power through this or overcome it. I don't necessarily enjoy being in the trenches with my grief, but I think that there is productivity there and opportunity there, and I'm for that.
Yeah, I think that's well said, Tommy. Well, Tommy, I appreciate very much your transparency and honesty today about where you've been and where you are and what it's been like, because I think that other men need to hear what it really is like and what you can expect it to be, and to know that you're not limited to what it is right now. That if you will lean into some of these things that Tommy and I have talked about today, that there is absolutely hope that you are going to be in a better place, with your grief journey. So, Tommy, thank you so very much for agreeing to be my guest today and giving us an inside look at your life and sharing your son Nick with us today.
It's been my pleasure, Greg. I'm very thankful for the opportunity.
Well, it's the pleasure and the privilege are all mine, Tommy.
To God be the glory. Thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us today. If you would like to offer your thoughts on today's episode, simply click the link under the episode summary. And if you're interested in sharing your story on a future episode, email us using the provided link. Join us again in 2 weeks to hear another story of how God meets us in our pain, creates something beautiful from the broken pieces, and restores meaning, purpose, and hope.